Welcome to EdVantage. I'm your host, David Young, and I want to wish you a happy new year. It's hard to believe that it's 2024. Now, many of you know that I'm the proud dad to triplets, Mason, Connor, and Emma. And they were on the podcast a few months back, and they're seniors in high school this year. And I can remember way back when they were in kindergarten realizing that they would graduate in the year 2024. And back then, that just seemed like that would be an eternity. And you just blink your eyes, and here we are, seniors, and looking at colleges and doing all the things that you do toward the end of that career. So, needless to say, time really flies. So I hope that as we're getting back into school after winter break, I hope you've had a good transition back to school during and are ready for the second semester. I can also remember when I was an elementary school teacher in first, second, third grade, everywhere around that range, and I can remember how much sometimes the group of students would change over winter break. Some of the kids would come back with new energy and readiness to learn. Many of them would. Some would come back because winter break was kind of a tough time for them, and so they would come back ready for school and ready to be in that safe, secure environment again. But almost always they would come back a little bit different than before, with some maturity changes and other changes. And I always thought that that made the second semester kind of a fun and interesting time. So as you get back into school, I want to encourage you to encourage your teachers to begin learning with the students quickly, get them engaged. Be sure to reestablish relationships and routines, but my recommendation would be that you not do that in isolation. In my experience, learning, engagement, relationships, and routines often work the best when they're woven together. I've been talking with administrators lately about the power of, quote, learning relationships. That's probably a podcast episode for another day, but the gist of it is relationships are so important, but things go to another level when we have trusting relationships and students can see how we can help them take the next step, level up, achieve a goal, overcome a barrier, and just experience success in general. So I encourage you with your staff, if you're a school administrator or a district administrator, to think about and work on how we as a staff can intentionally form learning supportive and learning relationships with our students. And so just needless to say, I'm rooting for you as you get this semester started. So let's transition and talk about my guest today. We haven't had a podcast episode in a couple months, so today for me is like shooting the latest episode out of a cannon. I'm really excited with my guest today. I'm thrilled to have Ron Clark of the Ron Clark Academy with me today. Ron's accolades are kind of endless. He is the founder of the Ron Clark Academy. He's a much sought after keynote speaker and consultant. He's a New York Times bestselling author, Disney Teacher of the Year. He's been on Oprah, and I don't know if he'll tell that story today, but if not, you should Google and listen to the story of Ron on Oprah. And he's had a movie made about his story. So many things there. Educators from all over the U.S. and the world visit the Ron Clark Academy each year to see what it is that makes the approach so powerful. Needless to say, his work has had a tremendously positive effect on the field of education. And I guess I should throw in a little humble brag that my educational cooperative, the Central Kentucky Educational Cooperative, has Ron coming to kick off our summer conference next summer, Central Kentucky EduCon. It's June 13th and 14th. He's going to be the keynote speaker on day one, and we'll talk about that more later. But for today, I can't wait to get started with the conversation. So without further ado, Ron Clark, welcome to EdVantage, and thank you for spending some time with me today.
Thank you, sir. I'm honored to do so.
So I said a lot about you in the intro there. So is there anything that you'd like to clarify or add to just kind of let our listeners know a little bit more about you?
Lord have mercy. I think probably the most important thing to understand is that I'm just a school teacher. I still teach school. I started teaching in 1994 and I'm still teaching. So I teach math to fifth grade and I teach history to sixth and seventh grade. Then I do a current events class for fourth through eighth grade. I grade all my own papers. I don't have any assistant. I'm just a full-time teacher in addition to running the school. But that's at the heart who I am and what I love to do, just to teach.
Good. And of course, I know our listeners, some are going to listen on audio, but some are going to see this on video. And when we jumped on the Zoom, we talked about, I said you had a beautiful auditorium behind you, but would you like to share with the listeners what we're
Sure.
seeing behind you there?
So for those of you who can see, I'm sitting in the seats where I have 30 kids in every class. So this is where my students sit. But then in my classroom, I have 220 seats and a stadium seating because every week, educators from all over the world, all 50 states, they come here to Atlanta, they sit in my classroom, they watch me teach, and they watch the other teachers in my school teach, and then they take our ideas back to their schools. We're the only place in the world where you can watch teachers teach with 30 kids in the classroom where you observe and you see different, unique, creative methods and how we get all kids to be successful. It's pretty incredible. 125,000 educators have sat in my classroom and watch me teach. It's unreal, and it's just a great opportunity.
It is unreal. What a great opportunity to be able to come and because I'm a big fan, and our listeners on EdVantage know when I was an administrator, and even today, I did a lot of high performing school visits. So I would figure out, or we as a school would figure out how we wanted to get better, and then we'd go visit someone who was doing a really good job in that area. And we all beg, borrow, and steal from each other, but we're willing to share those things because we got into education not just for our kids, but for all kids.
Mhm.
But on those high performing school visits, you could pop in a classroom and watch for a while. But what you're describing is a whole other level of being able to really see what a lesson looks like and what that approach looks like in your school. So that's really exciting, and that's a great way to approach helping others improve.
Right. I went all over the nation trying to find the best teachers I could find, and I put them all in one building. And our school, it's just an incredible place with energy and creativity. And the teachers here, I encourage them to teach in ways no one's ever thought of. So when you as an educator come to visit, you're seeing an educator try different things, try different techniques, the way we structure our lessons, the way we engage with students. I mean, it's really beautiful. And teachers sit in our classrooms and cry. And they'll say, wow, now I've seen what I need to do. You give me so many ideas and strategies. I'm going to go back and be a better teacher. It's amazing stuff.
It is amazing stuff. So let's dig a little bit more into teaching, and particularly into your teaching career. I know you started out in North Carolina, I believe, and then you taught in Harlem for a while. And so, you said you've been teaching since 1994. So what are some things, as you've grown as an educator, what are some things as a teacher that really are kind of the anchors for you, or the things that stand out about what good instruction looks like, things like that?
All right. So, yeah, I'm from the country. You can probably tell in my mouth the tractor falls out. I'm from dirt roads in North Carolina. I'm the first person in my family who decided to go to college. And I was just working at a Dunkin' Donuts drive-through. And long story short, there was a teacher at a local school that passed away. And I never expected to teach. It wasn't something I had interest in doing. But my mom twisted my arm, and I went into this school. I talked to the principal, and she said, "Oh my goodness, this class is all different types of learning levels, there's all types of problems. You're just the man for the job." And I said, "No, I'm not." And she said, "What, you don't want this job?" I said, "No, ma'am." She said, "Then why are you here?" And I said, "My mama made me come. I don't want to teach." And so she said, "Well, let me at least introduce you to the students." She walked me down the hallway, and the class was just going crazy and throwing paper. They were loud. The poor substitute teacher was trying to teach her. Her wig was off to one side. And this little kid's desk was pushed up to the front door. And he looked up and said, "Is you going to be our new teacher?" And I just had this
Mm.
feeling in my heart. And I was like, "Oh, I guess so." And the principal said, "Really, you'll take the job?" And I did. And from that moment until now, I think the anchor for what I've tried to do as a teacher is just relationships. When I first started, the kids were really rude, really disrespectful, had a lot of discipline problems. but I started eating lunch with the kids. And look, eat lunch with the discipline problems because they are funny at lunch. And so I got to know them differently in the lunch table than in the classroom. I went to their basketball games. I started doing home visits where I would sit down with the parents and explain some of my expectations for my class. And just little things like that. I started greeting the kids at the door with a high five and using music in the classroom and just trying to make it hands-on. And I found that when I built relationships with the students, they relaxed, they calmed down, they trusted me. And then once I had done that, then I was able to really push them and have high expectations.
Absolutely. Those building those relationships are so important. I talked a little bit about that in the intro. That, but also, you touched on making the learning engaging, and I know I want to go there in a few minutes because I know that's one of the hallmarks of the approach is really making learning engaging so that you can access the level of rigor that you want to access. But you mentioned before I go there, you mentioned your mom.
Mhm.
And in listening once to you talk to you kind of tell your story, I heard you talk about your grandma and how when you wrote your book, The Essential 55, it was things that you were doing in your classroom, but a lot of them were partially based on lessons that maybe your grandma taught you. I bet your mom had played a part in that as well. But
Right.
am I on track there? And can you
Oh,
elaborate a little
yeah.
bit more on that?
So when I grew up, I spent a lot of time with my grandma. She lived with us. And I remember one time we went to the Piggly Wiggly grocery store and I opened the door and walked through, and she snatched me. And she was like, "Don't you see these people behind us? You hold that door for them too." She was very big on respect, manners, saying thank you. When we go to a restaurant, she insisted I ordered and looked the waiter in the eyes. She said, "I'm not going to tell the waiter, do you want to eat today? You're going to look the waiter in the eyes and tell the waiter what you want." And so she was just very insistent on manners, respect, how you treat people. She would say, "You know what, that mailman, he works hard every day. I want you to write a card and you go thank that mailman and you put it in the mailbox for how hard he's working to do that job." So she was always just trying to find ways to show people courtesy. And so I was raised in that environment. When I started teaching, I was like, oh my, it was the first time I realized not every kid was raised by somebody who was intent on common courtesies. So I wrote them down. I wrote down 55 things my grandmama taught me and just little things about how to treat people, how to cheer for others, how to be a good member of a team. And I practiced them with my students, just like my grandmama practiced with me. And we role played. And I said, when we go through the cafeteria today, you're going to look every cafeteria worker in the eyes and say, Good afternoon. I hope you're having a good day." And just little things like that. I said, we're going to learn the names of the custodians. And when we pass the custodians in the hallway, we should say, "Hey, and thank you for all you're doing for us today." Just little things. And I found that once I taught those 55 rules to my students and I explained why they were important, discipline problems kind of went away. There was more structure. One of the kids said, "Mr. Clark, I like this class now because I can get my learning on. Ain't nobody bothering me." And I said, "Buddy, you was the worst one. What are you talking about?" But and that's when I learned that even the challenging kids wanted structure, wanted to know I was in charge. They wanted that safety. So those 55 rules that I wrote down and taught the kids, it started to spread. Other teachers said, "Can we use your 55 rules? Can we use them?" Eventually, when I went to teach in Harlem, I taught my students in Harlem the 55 rules. It worked there. And so eventually I won the American Teacher of the Year award. I got to be on the Oprah Winfrey Show, and Oprah said, "You should write a book." And y'all, when Oprah tells you to write the book, you do what Oprah tells you. So I wrote a book called The Essential 55. And Oprah made it one of her book picks. The book was #2 in the nation for months and months and months. It was behind one of them Harry Potter books. And then so now it's in 26 different languages. It's used in China, it's used in Russia, it's used in Mexico. It's teachers all over the world and parents all over the world use those 55 rules my grandmama taught when they're raising kids or teaching kids.
Awesome. I'm interested in knowing when you started implementing that, you were taking a little bit of a different approach. It was something that was there was some novelty to it. So how was it initially? Was it initially received with open arms by students and families and administration and other teachers, or were they kind of looking down like, Mr. Clark? I'm not sure exactly what he's doing down there on the other end of the hall, but so I just wonder how it was initially taken.
Yeah, for my whole career, there have been people who always think this man is crazy. But one thing that they couldn't say is that I didn't work hard. I think everybody saw this man worked so hard and he's trying all kinds of things and he's willing to really do whatever it takes to help kids. And so I think that garnered respect. When I was in North Carolina and I was in the country and I said, I'm going to teach these 55 Southern manners, nobody balked at that. Everyone was like, yes, we should. Let's teach these things. Now, when I went to Harlem and I tried to teach the 55 rules, it was a little different. It was a different climate up north. One of the parents said to me, she said, you came up here talking about these 55 rules. She said, and we all told you we supported it, but behind your back, you know what we were calling you? I said, what? She said, we nicknamed you. We were calling you the White Tornado because you were coming in and you had all this stuff you want to do. And we're like, this man has lost his mind. But once they saw that their kids started being more respectful at home, more respectful around their neighbors. They're like, wow, these rules you're teaching in class, it's really also affecting my child in the home. I really like this. Now, in terms of the kids, if you tell kids, here are 55 rules, they're going to hate it. So I said, these are 55 keys for your life. There are doors in your future that you're going to want to open, and you won't be able to open them without this key. I'm going to teach you 55 things that if you do these things, it's going to open those doors for you. So that kind of helped. And then I wanted to put one of the rules as just something kind of ridiculous to add some fun and some energy to the rules. So Rule 47 says Doritos are not allowed. And honestly, I don't like Doritos because when I was a kid, my sister and I would get one bag of Doritos to eat each day. She would lick all the cheese off one Dorito, put it back in the bag so I wouldn't have any because it would freak me out. So I've never liked Doritos. So I told the kids, Doritos are illegal. So they're like, what? But why? I said, because I can't stand it. Da, 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 da. So it was something so crazy and so wild that it made the kids see the rules as something, I don't know, kind of like a novelty and something interesting and something you won't believe this. Here's a rule about no Doritos. And then sometimes kids would try me and like I would be teaching and I would see a Dorito bag in a backpack. So I would say, everybody freeze. And I'd start sniffing. And I'd start walking around the room and I'd go to the bag and pull it out and say, aha. And so the rumor spread that I could smell Doritos like a mile away. And years later, I took students who I had taught fifth grade. They were getting ready to go to college. And I took them on a tour to visit colleges around the East Coast. And we stopped at a gas station. I said, okay, all 14 of you can go in and get one snack and one drink and I'll pay for it. So I rang it up at the register and I met them outside and they had all got a bag of Doritos. I said, what are y'all doing? They said, just for old time's sake, Mr. Clark, will you smash these Dorito bags and throw them in the trash can? I said, but then you won't have a snack. And they said, it's worth it. It's worth it for old time's sake. So I did. But anyway.
Oh man, that's awesome. So let me transition then. Let's talk a little bit about the academy. So I mentioned to you earlier, I haven't gotten to visit yet, but I'm coming soon. I'm planning to come this spring. When I watch videos though of the things that are going on there at the Ron Clark Academy, the two words or maybe three words that come to my mind are engagement, passion, and connection. The students just seem to be so engaged in the learning and connected with it, but they're also connected with each other and they're connected with the staff. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like the game changer comes with engagement, passion, and connection is that it propels kids to excel within the really rigorous expectations that you guys have for them there. I've heard you talk about rigor and how important that is. So just wondering, am I on the right track as I say that? And if so, can you add anything to that?
Yeah. Well, I visited all 50 states with my team. We've been at schools all over America to kind of learn what is going on in education in our country. We've also visited countries like Finland, and we go to China and Japan, and we study other countries' education systems as well. And what we have realized is that we are teaching this dumbed down education curriculum in America. We're raising this coddled, wussified generation of kids where everything right now in America seems to be focused on everybody's feelings, the feelings of students, so much so to the point where we're not really challenging kids. In classes, when you sit, no matter what state we went to, I would see some gifted kids in classes, some average kids, and some low classes. And it seemed like every lesson was geared toward helping the lowest kids understand what was going on. And the gifted kids are sitting there like, okay, I'm bored to death. And then I'd sit down with the teacher and I'd say, well, there was a moment in your lesson where you spent 15 minutes to help that girl who didn't understand the concept And then teachers will be proud. They would say, oh, yes, because I'm not going to leave that child behind. No child's going to be left behind. And I would ask this question: do you feel like you left the gifted kids behind because those 15 minutes that they were ready to go, but you decided to spend time focusing on the lower kid? And they would say, they would repeat, but I can't leave that kid behind. So at our school, I wanted to try something differently. And I said, in our classes, we have all different types of learning levels here. Why don't we every day focus on that gifted kid? Challenge the gifted kid, make it rigorous for the gifted kid, really higher order questioning. Let's push that child. And I think if we make it engaging, if we can keep every kid engaged, make every kid want to be in the classroom, build relationships, make it hands-on, use energy, then I think what's going to happen is I think test scores for every kid will increase. And over the last 17 years, we've proven it. Our test scores are through the roof every year. The growth is astronomical. But it comes from this concept of we teach to the top, but then the key is that you have to keep everybody else engaged. And it's pretty beautiful to see. And that's one of the things that educators come to see when they visit our school. And the reason why we think it's important to do this is because currently the United States is ranked 41st in the world in math and science test scores.
Yep.
We're raised in this coddled, wussified country, and the rest of the world, bam, 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 they're pushing, they're challenging. We're the top and we've relaxed. We have the world's #1 economy, #1 military, #1 infrastructure. When you 41st in the world in math and science, that's the biggest indicator of where your country's going to be. So I feel like as good citizens, we have got to flip around what we're doing here in America, challenge our gifted kids, give them the education they deserve, but then hold those high expectations for everybody and find ways to help to get them to that level.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that you're really speaking my language then. At my cooperative, we work with districts all the time. There so many times you walk into a classroom and if you can talk with the teacher about what it is that she's intending or he is intending to teach, whatever the standard or the learning target is that they're shooting for that day, so many times the actual work that the students are doing or the resources that the teacher's using or the assessment that they're using is below the level of that target of it, and it's almost it's many times it's unconscious. The teacher feels, everything looks right and feels right. Maybe there's even some decent energy in the room, but what's actually happening is below grade level. And if that happens in a classroom for a day or two, I guess maybe that's not the end of the world. But if it happens for 170, 175, 180 days a year, your expectations are below grade level all year long. We have something at our co-op we call Trunk of the Tree, which is a couple core systems that help teachers understand how to teach and do it at the level that the standard expects. And now, given with gifted and talented kids, they sometimes need to be extended even beyond that. But we see so often schools will underperform because they're kind of unconsciously teaching at too low a level, and there is some of that bless their heart mentality where no child left behind. There's some of that mixed in as well.
I don't know if this will make sense, but when I'm teaching, I want the 30 kids in my classroom to be drowning, like in a state of drowning. No, I don't want them drowned on the bottom of the ocean. I don't want them to be so lost that they're like, I'm giving up. But I don't want them to be on the jet ski either or chilling on the yacht. And when we visited schools in 300 school systems across the country, American kids are sitting there chilling, looking around, bored, not engaged. They're on the yacht, they're on the jet ski. And so at our school, I want them off that yacht in the water and constantly struggling to understand what's going on and to have a desire to understand what's going on. And it's that type of energy that we try to create every day in our school.
Yeah, I hear you. It makes me think about, it's kind of educational jargon, but we talk about a productive struggle. We all kind of learn best when we're in that zone of, almost frustration, but really just a good, healthy challenge where we feel like we might fail, but now we're not going to. We're starting to get it, and now we ramp up that expectation a little bit more. So I totally agree with that. If you go visit a school and they say, Ron, what are two or three things that we can do in the short term, and maybe two or three that we can do in the long term to to help our students, to help them achieve at higher levels. You guys are coaching other folks coming into your school all the time. Does it ever distill down to just, hey, I would do these two or three things right now? These will make a difference quickly, and these might make a difference if you stick with them over the course of time.
Yeah, I mean, I've got thousands of examples. Some of them are really simple. And so when teachers come here, they learn hundreds of things. I'll just give you like a few. These are easy things. You can go back and do the next day. Then I'll tell you some that are more complex. So number one, educators need to look in the eyes of students when they're teaching, because educators in America, most of them, they're looking at the board, or you're generally looking at the classroom. So one thing we do is we show the power of making eye contact with kids as you're teaching. And so it's a simple thing, and most educators think they're doing it, but they're not. So our goal, like every class I teach, my goal is to hold at least a 3-second interaction with every kid in that classroom, right directly in the eyes, so that it's more of a conversation and less of a I'm just lecturing. Next thing, when students come in our classrooms, we have music playing. So music's going in when they walk in the room. We play the music when they go out. And we found that when you play music, kids come in faster. They get their books and their notebooks out quicker. There's less talking. When you don't play the music, that's when they're moving slower. So that's when you can have problems arise. They can't find their pencil or their homework. So we do lots of little things like that are really small things. Relationships, eating lunch with kids at lunch, that's powerful. Sending a text message to a parent. I think a lot of teachers in America think of parents like a sleeping bear. Like, let me just pretend the bear doesn't exist, because if you poke the bear, problems might arise. But we love to get parents involved at our school. So we send lots of texts like, hey, I just wanted to send you a picture of this writing sample your son did today. It's so great. He's a great writer. You should be proud of him. Or you send a text and say, hey, your daughter was really paying attention in class today. Outstanding job. Because when the parents realize that you as a teacher see potential in their kid, you're willing to share the potential and the successes, you give a parent things to celebrate with their child. I mean, little things like that. It's not rocket science. And I wish more people would do it, but they don't. So those are like some simple, of the hundreds and hundreds, those are just a few that's popped in my head. Now, there's more complex things, and this one might be hard to understand, especially because I don't have my class here for you to watch. In our school, we don't allow kids to raise their hands. If you, whether you're eighth grade or fourth grade or whatever grade you're in, if you want to say something in class about the content, you just say it. Mr. Clark, where did that number come from? But why would Bashar al-Assad do that? I don't understand why George Washington would have made that decision when he's on the battlefield. You just actually speak out. And it seems like it might end up being chaotic, but it gives autonomy to these kids. We were very frustrated when we went across America. There are educators raising their hand and waving their hand at the teacher all over America right now. The teacher's calling on one person. You know what the other kids are doing? They're leaving their hands up. They keep waving at the teacher. The kids don't listen to each other. So at our school, kids speak whenever you want to, but whenever a student speaks, y'all have to turn your head and look at that kid. So you all turn, listen to what that kid is saying, and then the next thing that is spoken must be in reference to that kid's idea. You can't be thinking about your own idea. Let's talk about that idea. Y'all, it's hard for me to explain that in this manner. It's easier to see it, but it is a powerful thing that is more complicated to put infuse in your classroom, but it's outstanding. One other thing that we do that is complicated, but it is powerful because you wanted something more extreme. I don't know if y'all know about the Harry Potter book. They had them 4 houses, like the Slytherin, the Gryffindor, and whatnot. So at our school, I said, why don't we also try this? Why don't we put kids in houses? So we have 4 houses here: Altruismo, Rever, the Dreamers, Issa the House of Courage. So when kids come the first day, they spin a big wheel, they're sorted in a house, and that house becomes like your fraternity, your sorority, your team. It's how we teach how to be a good sportsman, how to show sportsmanship, how to uplift each other. And then we have an app. So if a kid does something well in class, I can say, oh, I'm going to give 2 points to John for uplifting others. So the app keeps track of how many points each kid has gotten, how many points each house has gotten. Then I don't know if you can see way up there in the corner of my classroom, those of you who are watching, there's a TV screen. it shows the four houses and the kid from each house that most recently got the most points. So it builds a great climate and culture in your school. We started it here in 2007, but now our house system's in all 50 states. It's in countries all over the world. And it's just really beautiful.
Yeah, I love that. There's so many things woven into that. Just that one thing, that one system. The different lessons that you can teach kids, and so the characteristics you can instill are really great. So, we talked. I talked a little bit earlier about how much you've experienced a lot of success. What's motivating you right now?
Huh. What motivates me?
Something you're working on or learning about or being driven toward right now?
Yeah, a lot. There's a ton of things going on, but I think but to answer what motivates me, I think it's the thought of death. I mean, I don't mean to be morbid, but I'm always thinking like I'm not going to be here forever and I don't have much time, and I want to help as many people as I can, help as many students, build a foundation, show other educators how to use these methods so that they can be successful. I think I'm always just pushing because I've lost people that I loved, and
Mhm.
they're not here anymore. So I think what motivates me is knowing time is limited, and while I'm here, I'm gonna do all I can as quickly as I can.
You want to do as much good as you can while you can.
Yes.
Yeah, same here.
But also, motivation comes from the kids. Back in 1994, I had kids that were really struggling academically. And at the end of the year, they tested at the top of the school. And we were the number one performing class in the district. And the kids were so proud of themselves. And so seeing that growth, that of course always motivates me because I've seen teaching's hard, but if you do it right and if you do it well, you can change a life. So that motivates me, of course.
It's one of the only professions that I can think of, maybe the only profession that I can think of where you can literally you can impact a kid's life positively, which then impacts his family's life in the present and in the future. And if you do that enough times, you can impact an entire community. I can't really think of any other profession that has that kind of power. That's a really neat thing. That's a big responsibility, but gosh, what an awesome thing.
Yeah, I've taught long enough that I've taught students my 55 rules, and now they've taught their children the 55 rules. So it's
Mhm.
just kind of it snowballs.
You mentioned, and I know we've got to wrap up because you're teaching. You got to get your kids in a couple minutes. So I'll be fast. You mentioned a minute ago, like student achievement, about students or who excelled at the end of the year. Where do you fall on the whole? There are people that are like super anti standardized test and just those things. We don't need to spend any time on those things. And then there's also, and of course, I can tell you that I don't think that that's everything, but I do think it's something. I do think it's an indicator of learning. But I just wonder, there are some that are just like, whole child, everything needs to be performance based versus ever taking a multiple choice or short answer test. Just interested to know kind of where you are in that dichotomy.
Well, I've been around long enough to know that everything ebbs and flows and there's a cycle. So in the 70s, there was this whole thing about less testing in schools. The 80s was really heavy on let's test, test, test. The 90s kind of pulled back, not so much testing. Then George Bush, we had No Child Left Behind. Testing became everything. Now we're in a thing in America where it's like, no, testing isn't that important. We shouldn't test so much. So if you're an educator and you don't like what's going on in education, just wait a minute because it all is a cycle. It just keeps going round and around. So, but in terms of testing, I think, finding some kind of a happy medium. So we do give the end of grade test at the end of the year. I do not give benchmark tests throughout the year. I just do the end of the year, the big tests. But what we do is I told my staff, you are not allowed to tell kids things like this. Y'all need to pay attention because this might be on the end of grade test, or oh, you're going to fail your grade, or I could lose my job if I don't get good test scores. Because as we went across the nation and we met with students, this is what we would ask American kids. Why do you come to school? why is it important to get a good education? And tons of kids would say, oh, at the end of the year, you got to pass this test. Or, oh, I want to get a good SAT score. I want to get a good college. So we as adults have taught kids in America, you learn to take a test score. So I told my staff, yes, we're going to give the test at the end of the year. We want to have that so that we can, guide instruction and learn what we did well, what we did not do well, and so forth. But we're just going to tell them throughout the year, you're learning for the joy of learning. We tell our students, an educated mind sees the world differently. When you read books, you're going to understand references. You're going to understand references in movies that you see. You're going to be able to have deeper conversations with people. You're going to understand art, culture. You'll be able to help your community because you'll have more ability to help your family and your community. An educated mind is a brilliant mind, and it's going to help the way that you walk this world and live this life. That's how we teach at RCA. But then at the end of the year, we say, oh, by the way, next week, we're going to have a celebration of learning. This is where y'all get to show everything you learned this year. You're going to kill it because you worked so hard. Now is the time we're going to really show what you've learned. We have a big breakfast. We do all the tests and everything we have to do for 2 days. And test scores are extremely high. I don't think the test scores are extremely high just because of how we do that. We teach our butts off. That helps. But I think it definitely takes the pressure off of the kids and makes them enjoy the learning process more.
I love that. When we're in schools, we often tell teachers and principals, and I maybe have said it on the podcast before. If we can come into the classroom as teachers and just hit a home run every day, just home run after home run after home run after home run, and one day we're going to walk in and we're going to take the state assessment. But it doesn't have to be. We don't have to have a pep rally to get ready for it. Let's hit a home run every day, and then one day we're going to take this state assessment, or 2 or 3 days in a row we're going to take the state assessment, and we're going to do great, not because we made it this gigantic thing, but because we did a really nice job hitting those home runs in the classroom every day. It's it puts it into perspective, and then the information that you get back, it means more. It's not gimmicky in that way. You can do something with that information at that point.
Yes, sir.
So, kind of transitioning here as we finish. I mentioned Central Kentucky EduCon. We're really excited about having you kick us off next summer on June 13th. And for our listeners, EduCon is going to be a showcase of best practices. So we're going to have Ron there on day one. We're going to have Dave Burgess there on day two, who wrote Teach Like a Pirate. And then in the afternoons, or later in the morning into the afternoon, we're going to have breakout sessions where school districts from all over Kentucky are going to be presenting awesome things that they do that impact kids in a really positive way. So it's going to be a celebration of learning in its own right. So, as we kind of wrap up today, what can our listeners who hopefully come to EduCon maybe expect to hear from you that day?
Wow, I guess I look forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun, but basically I'm just going to share some of my strategies and techniques for truly in the classroom, helping kids be successful. Also, I'll be sharing some parent issues, like when you do have issues with parents, how do you handle those situations in a way that's effective? But then also, if you're feeling burnt out as a teacher and you're like, I really don't want to do this anymore. I don't even want to go to this conference. I'm just done. How do you dig deep and find strength within in order to still make a difference in the lives of kids? And but also I'm going to talk about the fun and the magic of teaching, because so often we focus on how hard it is and the negative things. So I'm going to focus on what makes it joyful and fun, and just reminding us how wonderful of a profession it is.
Awesome. That's going to be a lot of fun. Ron, how can our listeners, if they want to find out more about you, how can they do that?
Sure. Our school website is just ronclarkacademy.com. And then on Instagram, I post lots of things our school does to give different schools ideas. It's just my Instagram handle is Mr. Ron Clark.
Okay. Very good. Well, Ron, again, thank you so much for joining me today. Really looking forward to seeing you later this summer.
All right. I appreciate you, sir. All right. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, so if you'd like to attend Central Kentucky EduCon, just visit www.ckec ckec.org. Again, that's ckec.org to learn more and to register. And for today, that's going to do it for another episode. So appreciate you joining us. Thanks to Ron Clark for joining us as well. I hope you have a great week and take care.